Billionaires. Some of you like them. Some of you hate them. Some of you, and probably our next billionaires, love them precisely for the very reason that they are hated: the unequal distribution of power. In this episode, we look into a man with an insatiable appetite for growth, a heavyweight billionaire who keeps expanding no matter what. I bring to you a man who owns everything, Mr. Johan Rupert.
Every kitten grows up to be a cat. They seem so harmless at first, small, quiet, lapping up their saucer of milk. But once their claws get long enough, they draw blood, sometimes from the hand that feeds them. For those of us climbing to the top of the food chain, there can be no mercy. There is but one rule: hunt or be hunted. Welcome back.
He inspires some and petrifies the rest. Johan Rupert is perhaps the most powerful man in South Africa. However, in order to understand how he amassed his fortunes and, more importantly, his influence, we need to travel back to the small town of Graaff-Reinet in the Eastern Cape, where Mr. Anton Rupert was born. Unlike his son Johan, Anton was not born into wealth. As a matter of fact, it was the contrary, as he couldn't even afford his medical studies. Unfortunately, he had to drop out. And as most of you know, it is emotionally devastating to have financial difficulties that prevent you from obtaining an education. However, he persevered and decided instead to earn a chemistry degree, which, compared to an expensive and grueling 7 years in medical school, was much more achievable given his financial situation. Angered by this, Anton vowed to never ever allow financial difficulties set him back from achieving his dreams or that of his children. After completing his studies in chemistry, Anton landed himself a job as a lecturer at the University of Pretoria. But instead of getting a car and showing off the fact that he has a job now and a salary like most beta men at Gazi, he does what only an alpha would do. He does something only the top 1% has the balls to do. He starts a business. He takes his hard-earned cash working as a lecturer in chemistry and invests it in a business. For perspective, just so you guys understand how crazy entrepreneurs are, consider this. Chad, a baby ape, starts working. Immediately he gets himself a vehicle. He shows off this car and picks up beautiful women, and life is good in his pathetic little Polo TSI. But now, consider Giga Chad. He can obviously do what Chad did, or he can risk his money into a business venture and lose everything and not even have a car to show for it. Now that's the difference between beta apes and the silverbacks, and Anton was a silverback. So after a short while working as a lecturer, he starts a dry cleaning business. Can you imagine that? An entire lecturer leaving his nice academic job to clean other people's clothes. A lot of people talk about how they're gonna go out and start their own businesses one day, but none of them have the balls to leave their nice salaries and actually do it. All they do is talk and
I talk, but guess fucking what? I back it up!
The dry cleaning business would be his first venture. However, in 1929, terror strikes as America enters the Great Depression.
Those memories of fear are coming back.
Procter and Gamble. Procter's trading at 60.
What the heck is going on down here? I don't know.
All of a sudden here, we started hearing screaming, buy.
Like most countries, when America suffers, they suffer too, since they own the reserve currency of the world. Mzansi was no exception. South Africa entered an economic depression, and while the average man despairs during times of economic turmoil, the cutthroats and the ruthless make profits while the weak perish. And that's exactly what Anton did. He looked for opportunities, while others only saw adversity. Anton noticed that despite the economic calamity, people were still buying cigarettes. He noticed that the demand for tobacco and alcohol had not diminished. So during times of economic uncertainty, he did what any Giga Chad would do. He sought to profit from it. He literally started a manufacturing business, manufacturing cigarettes out of his own garage. And I know what some of you are thinking. What's with it with future billionaires and working in garages? Well, I don't know. But maybe we should also start working in garages as well. I mean, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Apple, and even Rembrandt were all started in garages, and all its founders became massively successful. Anyways, Anton relocates to Stellenbosch and establishes the Voorbrand Tobacco Company in his home garage. This company would go on to evolve as the precursor to what would later become the Rembrandt Group, and it is here where I would like to begin the story of Anton's heir, Mr. Johan Rupert. At the age of 34, Anton, realizing that his wife might be approaching the end of her biological clock, decided, together with his wife Hubert of course, to pop a few babies. Johan, being the oldest, followed by his precious daughter Hannelie, and lastly, Anthony Jr. While Anton Sr. was out there building an empire, Johan and his brother attended Paul Roos Gymnasium, a testosterone-excessive all-boys school where they developed competitive characteristics early, while their sister went to Bloemhof High School, a feminine all-girls school responsible for the successful business lady she is today. After Johan completed high school, he attended the University of Stellenbosch where he pursued a degree in business law, much like his billionaire counterpart Mr. Mutsipe, who did an LLB and majored in business. However, just like his father, Johan also dropped out of university, but for much more different reasons than his father. See, his father dropped out because he had no choice. Johan, however, dropped out because he had too many. Now, Johan is not known for his patience.
In business, impatience gets you there quicker than patience. So we have only three answers: yes, no, or I don't know and I'll find out.
And just like other really intelligent baby apes like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, due to his impatience, he felt like university was only slowing him down, so he dropped out. He took some of his father's money and went to New York, where he worked for the bank Chase Manhattan for 2 years. He then went to a financial advisory and asset management firm Lazard. These experiences taught him everything he needed to know about corporate finance, so he brought that knowledge back to the hood. Okay, not really back to like the hood, but he did come back to Mzansi to found the Rand Merchant Bank, now simply known as RMB. Now remember, during this time his father was also working hard to build his own empire, an empire he would leave behind to his 3 kids. So in 1984, at the age of 68, Anton decided it was the perfect time to start grooming his young boy as his successor to the Rembrandt Group. As a result, Johan left RMB to work closely with his father, and at the age of 34, he was already a seasoned entrepreneur with vast experience working in finance and founding his own company. However, he still lacked the killer mindset instilled in all baby apes who aspire to become silverbacks, so that's exactly what his father went on to teach him.
You're not a killer. You have to be a killer.
See, anyone can learn corporate etiquette, being courteous and diplomatic. However, in order to be a shark, one must be ruthless. One must harbor a killer instinct. So after a couple of years under his father's tutelage, Johan graduated from being a beta chimp to an alpha silverback. For years after joining his father's company, Johan founded Richemont, a Switzerland-based luxury goods company that owns remarkable names such as Dunhill, Montblanc, Mr. Porter, and various other notable brands. This proved to be a massive success, such that in 1988, Johan would go on to be named Sunday Times Businessman of the Year. It's precisely at this point that Johan's recognition significantly increases as more and more people start to know him. This moves him closer to the one thing he craves more than anything, and it's not money.
Such a waste of talent. He chose money over power. In this town, a mistake nearly everyone makes. Money is the McMansion in Sarasota that starts falling apart after 10 years. Power is the old stone building that stands for centuries. I cannot respect someone who doesn't see the difference.
See, Johan has always been well taken care of. His father was a successful and rich businessman. However, it is not money that fills Johan's appetite. Johan is in search of something even more elusive than wealth. So in 1989, when Johan was appointed as the vice chairman of the Rembrandt Group, he could almost taste it, he could smell it, and in 1991, he got it. He was named the chairman of the Rembrandt Group. He finally obtained the one thing his heart so desperately craved: power.
I believe in power even more, for its own sake. Gore Vidal once wrote that power is an end to itself, and the instinctive urge to prevail, the most important single human trait. I've always told myself that everything I did was for her, but maybe it wasn't.
Maybe I love power more.
The following year, Johann was named one of 200 global leaders of tomorrow by the World Economic Forum. With all this influence, Johann yields his power to arrange a string of deals that would turn him into an undisputed business god. As Johann goes into full expansion mode, he engages in M&A transactions. M&A, which means mergers and acquisitions, is a fancy word for the buying and selling of companies where bigger companies buy smaller companies or merges with them in order to form one new company to consolidate their power. As Abraham Lincoln famously said, "Do I not destroy my enemies by making them my friends?" This is exactly what Johann is doing here. Instead of competing, he acquires his competitors, suppliers, and even customers in order to grow. Mark Zuckerberg did the same thing when he perceived Instagram as a threat to Facebook, but instead of competing, he acquired it for $1 billion. Analysts today value Instagram upwards of $100 billion, making this the greatest deal of all time. In the early 2000s, amid these mergers and acquisitions, Johann flexed his business acumen once more by unlocking billions of rands in value by unbundling the Rembrandt Group. This is common amongst large corporations, sometimes in order to perform better and focus on core operations, or maybe if the board feels like their stock is valued inappropriately by the market, the board can split the company into separate listed entities. It's like that painful truth my ex told me a few years ago when she said, "We are better apart." It's painful to hear, but sometimes it's true. And it was true for the Rembrandt Group, because if you had invested only 100,000 Rand before the unbundling, you would have made a return of 1.4 million Rands today. The Rembrandt Group is split into two companies, Remgro, which is the holding company home to significant investments within the financial services industry, and Richemont, which was spun off into the holding company for Rembrandt's international assets. Both companies are listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and Johann is a significant shareholder and chairman to both corporations. Now, before I move on, I think it's important to note the fact that Johann listed both these entities on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Why? Because what Johann is doing here effectively is that he is building businesses abroad and bringing that money back into the South African economy through taxes. This is good, not only for the South African economy, but the poor people of South Africa who are supposed to be benefiting from these taxes had our government not be so corrupt. Johann is also the biggest or the largest tax contributor. He's the largest taxpayer in South Africa. I just think these things are important to note because they either go unappreciated or unnoticed altogether. Now you might be thinking, what are some of these juicy stakes that Johann has in his company's portfolio? Well, over the years, Johann has made strategic acquisitions in the following companies. Number 1, Mediclinic International, where he owns 44.6%. Mediclinic is an international private hospital group with operations in South Africa, Namibia, Switzerland, and the United Arab Emirates. Number 2, Distel, where he owns 31.7%. I know you alcoholics will love this acquisition, as Distel owns some of your favorite drinks such as JC Leroux, Nederberg, 4th Street, Three Ships, Amarula, and most importantly, Savannah. Number 3, an 80.7% interest in RCL Foods, which is the leading South African food manufacturer. Here's a list of some of the brands and products under RCL Foods. Try to see whether some of these products make their way into your grocery basket. Number 4, a 30.6% interest in Outsurance. I don't know how many times these people have called me, but Johann, if you're watching this, please tell them to stop. I don't need insurance right now. Number 5, 32.3% of eMedia. eMedia owns ENCA and the TV station ETV. Most of us, the 90s kids, loved this channel back in the day because of its movies, and we especially liked it at 12 o'clock at night. Don't ask me why. Number 6, Discovery, in which he owns 7.7%. Number 7, Blue Bulls, in which he owns 50%, with Patrice Motsepe owning 37%. You know, Billionaire Boys Club things. Number 8, Rupert also has a 44% stake in KTH, which owns Kaya FM, Jacaranda FM, Gagasi, Heart FM, and Momentum Metropolitan, just to name a few. I think it's also important to note that the Rembrandt Group co-founded South Africa's first cellular telecommunication company, Vodacom, which was sold for 15 billion Rand to Vodafone in 2009. Remgro also recently unbundled their 25% stake in Greenrod. Johann also used to boast a significant shareholding in FirstRand owning FNB, Westbank, RMB Holdings, Ashburton Investments, and more. He owned Unilever too at some point, Unilever being the owner of several brands such as Omo, Sunlight, Omo and Sunlight, this guy's Vaseline, Axe, Domestos, Norox, The list goes on. They literally own everything from bathing to what you eat in the kitchen to when you in the toilet. With so many companies spread out towards so many industries, somehow your rand will end up in his pocket unless you buy some of those Remgrow shares on easy equities and also have a slice in the profits, if you know what I mean. Wink wink. Hold up, this brings me to a disclaimer. I may or may not have investments in the companies I talk about in my YouTube videos. Please don't take anything I say as financial advice. If you do and it works out, I want no credit. If you do and it does not work out, I want no blame. I make these videos in my personal capacity. My views are not in any way reflective of that of my employer. If you find anything I say offensive or triggering in any way, I humbly apologize. But if you like what I do, if the topics of money, power and status are subjects that appeal to you, please consider subscribing. Today, Johan Rupert is worth a staggering $12 billion according to Forbes, making him the second richest man in Africa, second only to the richest black man in the entire world, Aliko Dangote, who I'll also be covering on my YouTube channel. This brings me to the end of my video. If you liked it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And to everyone starting businesses, getting degrees, dropping out, climbing the corporate ladder, making fortunes, making moves, to us I say, greatness is coming. See you on the next one. Peace.